Political power, meaning how to get it and how to justify using it. The ability to influence, direct, or control the actions, beliefs, or behaviors of others. Not just physical force, it is the capacity to get others to do something they might not otherwise do. Political power versus authority. Power is the ability to influence. Authority is the legitimate right to exercise that power. Example, a police officer has the authority to issue a ticket. 3 forces of power, Luke's. Decision making, actively making rules/laws, agenda setting, controlling what issues are discussed or ignored, ideological thought control, shaping how people think about the world. Hard versus soft power. Hard power uses coercion or incentives, so threat/money. Soft power uses attraction, culture, and persuasion. How to get political power. Legal, rational authority, which is democratic, holding a position in an institution. Example, Prime Minister, MP, Judge. Power comes from the rules, constitution, and election results. Traditional authority, inherited or based on long-standing custom. Example, a monarch or hereditary leader. Charismatic authority, the personal exceptional characteristics of a leader. Example, Gandhi, MLK Jr. Coercion/force, using fear or violence to maintain power, typical in dictatorship. Knowledge/expertise, power derived from specialized knowledge. Example, scientists, advisors. Methods of acquisition, elections, competitive voting processes, first past the post or proportional representation. Institutional pathways, climbing the party ladder. Bureaucracy or holding office. Social movement/activism, grassroots pressure to influence policy. Note key concepts: legitimacy, the public acceptance of authority. Pluralism, powers distributed among many groups, interest groups, parties, rather than just one elite. State, the supreme authority within a territory. How to justify using political power requires legitimacy, the belief by the citizens that the exercise of power is rightful and necessary. Consent of the governed. In democracies, power is justified because it comes from the people through regular, free, and fair elections. Rule of law, power is justified if it is used to uphold a fair, transparent, and consistent legal system that applies to everyone, including leaders. The common good, political power is generally justified when used to serve the collective interest of the community rather than private gain. Human rights protection, democratic power is deemed legitimate when it protects the rights and freedoms of its citizens. Social contract theory, people agree to give up some freedoms to government in exchange for security, order, and protection of rights. Different authorities. 1. Traditional authority. Source of power, long-standing customs on the way things have always been, why people obey out of habit or a sense of sacred duty to preserve heritage. Key feature, power is often inherited through bloodlines or religious systems. Example, hereditary monarchy, the British royal family, queen/kings. Legal, rational, legal authority. Source of power, formal, written rules, laws, and procedures. Why people obey. They believe in the legitimacy of the office or position, not necessarily the specific person holding it. Key feature, power is limited by a constitution or legal framework. If the person leaves the job, the power stays with the office. Example, Prime Minister of Canada or the President of the United States. Autocratic authority, source of power, concentration of absolute power in the hands of one single individual, the autocrat. Why people obey, maintained through repression, fear, and control rather than popular consent or established law. Key feature, little to no rule of law. The leader can make unilateral decisions without consulting others or being checked by other branches of government. Example, dictatorships like North Korea under the Kim dynasty. Society and government differences. Society, the natural network. Definition, a broad, informal group of people sharing a common culture, territory, and interactions. Origin, it exists naturally and evolved long before any formal political systems were created. Scope covers all human relationships, including family, religion, work, and social clubs. Rules, guided by unwritten norms, customs, and traditions. Consequence, breaking social rules usually leads to social exclusion or getting canceled, not jail. Government, the management system. Definition: the specific organization or group of people that holds the authority to run a state and implement law. Origin: it is an artificial institution created by society to maintain order and protect rights. Scope: concerned with external behavior, the things you do that affect others' safety and rights. Rules: guided by written formal laws and a constitution. Consequence: breaking government laws leads to formal punishment like fines or imprisonment. 3 functions of government. 1. The legislative branch, the lawmakers. Definition: the branch debates, amends, and passes laws. Components: in Canada includes the sovereign, represented by the Governor-General, the Senate, and the elected House of Commons. Write rules, bills for the country. The executive branch, the law enforcers. Definition: this branch implements, enforces, and administrates laws, policies, and daily government operations. Components: led by the Prime Minister, federal, or Premier provincial, and their cabinet minister. The jurisdictional branch, the law interpreters. Definition: this branch interprets the law, applies it to specific cases, and resolves disputes. Components: comprised of independent judges and courts with the Supreme Court of Canada at the top. They decide if laws have been broken and ensure justice is served. So, different political thinkers. The classical foundation, ancient Greece, focus on the good life and the purpose of the state. Socrates and Plato thought deeply skeptical of democracy. They saw it as mob rule. Government proposed a hierarchy ruled by philosopher, kings, intellectual elites with the wisdom to rule. Society believed in a rigid structure where everyone has a specific role, guardians, auxiliaries, producers, to maintain harmony. Aristotle believed humans are political animals who can only reach their full potential within a community, polis. Government favored a polity, a mixed government led by the middle class to prevent extremes of wealth or poverty. The social contract theorists, the big 3. Thomas Hobbes, human nature, inherently selfish and evil. State of nature, no government. War of all against all. Life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. The social contract, people trade all liberty for security. We need an absolute ruler, a Leviathan, to weep us from killing each other. John Locke, human nature, rational and born as a blank state. Tabula rasa. A state of nature, no government, mostly peaceful but inconvenient because there is no judge to settle disputes. The social contract, government exists only to protect life, liberty, and property. If they fail, citizens have the right to rebel. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, human nature, naturally good but corrupted by society/property. State of nature, no government, and primitive, happy, and free existence. The social contract, we must follow the general will, what is best for the whole community, not just the majority. True freedom is obeying laws we made ourselves. 3. Modern and radical perspectives. Nicole Machiavelli, the realist. He argued for a ruler, it is better to be feared than loved if you can't have both, and that the end justifies the means to maintain power. John Stuart Mill, the champion of alternarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number, and individual liberty. He argued the government should only interfere with you to prevent you from harming others, the harm principle. Karl Marx viewed history as a class struggle between the bourgeoisie owners and the proletarians, workers. He believed government was just a tool for the rich to stay in power and advocated for classless society. Mental lens, viewing power in society. What is an ideology? Definition: a showed set of beliefs and values about how society should be organized and the proper rules of government. Purpose: provides a blueprint for a social order, explaining why things are the way they are and how they should change. Key question: how should power and resources be distributed? 2. Core political and economic ideologies. Left-leaning, economic equality, communism, total state control of the economy to create a classless society with no private property. Socialism, favor collective ownership or heavy government intervention to ensure economic equality and robust social services like universal health care. Right-leaning, economic freedom and tradition. Conservatism prioritizes tradition, social stability, and small government with lower taxes and less market intervention. Capitalism, an economic system focused on private ownership and profit, often associated with right-leaning liberalism. The middle/mixed. Liberalism, most common Western ideology, it values individual liberty and free markets, but accepts some government intervention, taxes/laws to protect rights and the vulnerable. Extreme social control. Fascism, extreme right-wing nationalism with authoritarian control, often suppressing individual rights for the glory of the state. The political compass, two axes. So economic is x-axis, the left negative, left more government control, high taxes, social safety nets, right positive, right free market, low taxes, private property. Y-axis, which is social, left negative is authoritarian top, government should enforce order and traditional values. Right positive for social is libertarian bottom, government should stay out of personal lives, maximum freedom. Okay, the four quadrants. Authoritarian, left, which is red. Communism/state socialism, high government control of both economy and social life. 2, authoritarian, right, blue. Fascism/theocracy, free market leanings but strict social control and traditionalism. CPC, Conservative Party of Canada. 3, libertarian left, green. Democratic socialism/anarchism, economic equality but high personal social freedom. NDP, New Democratic Party, Green Party. 4, libertarianism right, yellow/purple. Libertarianism/laissez-faire, capitalism. Minimum government intervention in both money and personal choice. Okay, so environmentalism in politics. Environmentalism shifts the political focus from purely economic growth to ecological sustainability. Core principle, it argues that human activity must be managed to protect ecosystems and natural processes. Political spectrum, generally associated with the left, specifically through Green Party politics, though it increasingly influences all major parties. Key influence, legislation, pushes for laws like carbon pricing, phase outs of coal-fired power, and investments in renewable energy. Jurisdiction, in Canada, it creates tension between federal and provincial governments as Ottawa sets international standards while provinces often control implementation. Public priority, it forces a trade-off in political debates, jobs versus environment. Feminism in politics. Feminism is the movement for the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. Core principle, the personal is political, meaning personal experiences like domestic roles are tied to larger political structures. Waves of influence. First wave focused on legal rights, such as the famous 5, winning the right for women to be legally recognized as persons and the right to vote. Second wave campaigned for equal pay, reproductive rights, birth control, and ending violence against women. Key influence, gender budgeting. Modern Canadian politics includes feminist budgets that analyze how the government spending affects gender differently. Representation, a push for more women in leadership and decision-making roles to ensure diverse perspectives in policymaking. The intersection, ecofeminism. If your test asks about both genders, the key term is ecofeminism. Both together, sorry. Main argument, the logic of domination, the same patriarchal and capitalist systems that oppress women also exploit the environment. Political impact, environmental justice highlights that marginalized groups, particularly women in the global south, are most vulnerable to climate change. Policy shift, advocates for a more nurturing or collaborative approach to governance, care ethics, rather than one based on competition and exploitation. 1. Key agents of socialization, the who. These are the primary influence that first establish your values and can later challenge them. Family, the most significant early influence. Parents often pass down their political leanings or views on authority through rebellion, though rebellion can lead to a paradigm shift. Education, school exposes you to diverse viewpoints and historical facts that may conflict with homegrown beliefs. Peer groups. As you age, your friends' values often begin to carry more weight, potentially shifting your perspective to align with the new social circle. Media and social media. Algorithms often create echo chambers, but exposure to counter narratives or global crises online can trigger a sudden change in worldview. 2. Life experiences. The what. Concrete events often force individuals to reevaluate their political perspective, their unique outlook shaped by who they are and where they stand. Economic shift. Moving from a state of financial security to poverty or vice versa frequently changes views on government intervention and social safety nets. Travel and global exposure. Living in or visiting different cultures can dismantle ethnocentrism, the belief that your culture is superior, and foster global mindedness. Significant trauma or hardship. Research suggests early childhood trauma or neighborhood insecurity can make individuals more likely to favor government intervention and social programs. Intergroup contact. Working closely with people who hold opposing views, example on climate change or feminism, can reduce prejudice and shift rigid paradigms. 3. Psychological mechanisms of change. The how. Cognitive dissonance. This occurs when you hold two contradictory beliefs or when your behavior clashes with your values. To resolve the mental pain, you might change your political stance. Paradigm shift, a fundamental change in the basic concepts and experimental practices of a scientific discipline, or in this context, a total overhaul of your personal worldview. Generational replacement. As older generations pass away and younger ones take their place, societal political values shift collectively. Tested perspective versus opinion. Perspective, the where you stand, example being a student, a worker, or a newcomer to Canada. Opinion, the what you think about a specific issue, example tuition should be free. Ideology, the shared philosophy, example liberalism, conservatism, that links your values together in a coherent system. 1. The connection, why religion intersects with politics. Moral and ethical frameworks. Religion often provides the moral foundation for laws, influencing stances on topics like abortion, LGBTQ+ rights, and social justice. Source of legitimacy. Historically and currently, rulers or governments may use religious authority to justify their power or policies. Identity and division. Religion can be a source of social cohesion, but it can also be a divisive force. Example, India versus Pakistan, Israel versus Palestine. Political socialization. Religious institutions play a role in shaping the political attitudes and opinions of citizens. 2. Models of state and religion. Different states manage the intersection of religion and politics through various approaches. Theocracy, a state governed by religious authority where religious law is the law of the land. Example, Saudi Arabia, Iran. State religion / official religion. A specific religion is favored, sponsored, or recognized by the state, although other religions may be tolerated. Example, UK, Denmark. Secularism, strict separation. A strict separation of church and state, often to ensure public institutions remain neutral. Example, France, USA. Principled distance / accommodation, a model where the state is not tied to religious goals, but may intersect with, support, or accommodate religious groups. Example, Canada, India. Atheist state, the state actively opposes or restricts religious expression, viewing it as a hindrance to state ideology. Historical examples, Soviet Union, Albania. 3. Key concepts for CPW4. Separation of church and state. The principle the government, state, and religious institution church operate within different spheres designed to promote neutrality and freedom of conscience. Laicity, French model, a strict form of secularism that removes religions from the public sphere entirely. Religious nationalism, the belief that a country's national identity should be defined by its majority religion, often driving public policy. Fundamentalism, strict literal interpretation of religious texts that often seeks to enforce those tenets through political means. 4. Approaches in different contexts. Example countries. Canada, a secular state with no official state religion, but with laws and institutions historically influenced by Christian traditions. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 2A, protects freedoms of religion. India, a secular state that, unlike Western models, allows the state to intervene in religion to ensure equality. Example, banning caste-based discrimination and promoting reform. France, strictly secular, laicity, often banning visible religious symbols in public schools and government offices. Iran/Saudi Arabia, theocratic, where religion law, Sharia, directly influences the legal system and government policy. Now, nationalism, the country first approach. Nationalism is the belief that a specific nation, a group with shared culture, language, or history, should have its own sovereign state and that its interests must come before global concerns. Impact on politics. It often leads to protectionist trade policies, strict immigration controls, and a desire to withdraw from international treaties that limit a country's freedom. Example, the nationalist state. Hungary under Viktor Orban. The government prioritizes Hungarian values, has built physical walls to stop migration, and frequently clashes with the European Union to maintain absolute control over its own domestic laws. Internationalism, the global village approach. Internationalism is a belief that nations should cooperate through multilateral organizations to solve global problems like climate change, poverty, or war because these issues are too big for one country to handle alone. Impact on politics. It promotes globalization, open borders, and collective security. It requires states to give up a bit of their sovereignty to follow international rules. Example, the Internationalist Project, the United Nations, UN, or the European Union, EU. The EU is a supranational project where 27 countries share a currency and allow citizens to move freely across borders, believing that economic integration prevents war. Key contrast for your test. Nationalism asks, is this good for our people? Internationalist asks, is this good for the world, which ultimately helps us? 1. The five techniques to identify. Look for these specific tools cartoonists use to influence your opinion. Symbolism, using simple objects to stand for larger concepts. Example, a dove, peace, Uncle Sam, U.S. government, a beaver, Canada, or an octopus, a powerful controlling corporation. Exaggeration, caricature, overstating physical features like a politician's nose or ears to make them look ridiculous or highlight a character flaw. Irony, showing the difference between the way things are and the way they should be. If a politician is giving a speech on saving money while standing on a pile of wasted cash, that is ironic. Labeling, text used to make it 100% clear when an object or person represents. Example, a suitcase labeled taxpayer dollars. Analogy, comparing a complex political issue to a familiar everyday situation. Example, likening a messy trade deal to a chaotic family dinner. How to state the message. The message is the main point the cartoonist wants you to take away. Formula. The cartoonist is arguing that issue is opinion because evidence from techniques. Example, the cartoonist is arguing that the government's climate policy is ineffective because they use irony to show a tiny bucket being used to put out a massive forest fire. How to identify bias. Bias is the one-sided opinion that cartoonist holds. Since political cartoons are like visual editorials, they are rarely neutral. Check the tone. Is the person drawn as a hero, white clothing, strong posture, or a villain, dark shadows, sneaky expression? Identify the victim/target who is being ridiculed. If the cartoon makes a specific party look donkeyish, unintelligent, the bias is likely against that party. Consider the source. Check if the cartoon is from a specific publication known for certain political leanings. Example, The Economist or The Guardian.